What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 18. Sleepers and studs.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to give you a sleeper pick and my favorite stud at each position.
And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, NFL Week 18. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. So my quarterback stud is Kirk Cousins from the Minnesota Vikings, playing the Chicago Bears, who have the 7th worst defense overall, give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins has averaged 19 fantasy points per game on the season. He gets an average of 1.9 rush attempts per game. Gonna be about 6% owned. Projected at 18.9 fantasy points here in week 18. He's 6,500 DraftKings salary, 1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's gonna be 43 points scored in this game. So Vegas thinks there's gonna be 43 points scored in this game. And they have the Vikings favored by 7.5. So Kirk Cousins has scored 12, 24, and 37 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 3, 1, and 2 rush attempts in those games. So it's a great matchup for Kirk Cousins. He's not overpriced. You could go with Tom Brady for $100 less, coming off of a 41 fantasy point game last week. I think both of these plays would be just fine. Both of them have pretty good matchups, but I prefer Kirk Cousins here versus the Chicago Bears. Okay, my sleeper pick at the quarterback position, a guy who hasn't done much all season long, but finally had a good game last week. I like Russell Wilson from the Denver Broncos, playing the LA Chargers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing quarterbacks. Russell Wilson has averaged 15.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.4 rush attempts per game. He's going to be about 4% owned, projected at 16.2 fantasy points here this week. He's 5,400 DraftKings salary, 1,500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 39.5 points scored in this game, with the Broncos favored by 2.5. So Russell Wilson has scored 26 and 11 fantasy points in the last 2 games. He got 4 and 2 rush attempts in those games. So again, he hasn't played well all season long. We did pick him last week. I just had a feeling that to close the season out, Russell Wilson wants to make a statement here, prove that he's still got it. And I think he's going to be able to put up 20 plus fantasy points again this week. So I like Russell Wilson here versus the LA Chargers. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. So studs on the slate: Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook. But if you want to save some salary on a stud this week, I like Alvin Kamara from the New Orleans Saints, playing the Carolina Panthers, who have the 10th worst defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing running backs. Alvin Kamara has averaged 14.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 14.3 rush attempts per game and 5.4 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 13% owned, projected at 15 fantasy points here this week. He's 6,600 DraftKings salary, 500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 41.5 points scored in this game, with the Saints favored by 3.5. Now, Alvin Kamara has scored 9, 19, and 12 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 16, 20, and 21 rush attempts on top of 1, 4, and 2 pass targets. So pretty decent volume the past 3 weeks. Production has been a little spotty, but he's got a pretty decent matchup here, and I think he can score 20 fantasy points or more in this one. Price tag is pretty low for the upside, so I like Alvin Kamara here versus the Carolina Panthers. Okay, my sleeper pick at the running back position.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Is Zach Moss from the Indianapolis Colts playing the Houston Texans, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Zach Moss has scored 7, 8, and 8 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 15, 12, and 24 rush attempts on top of 0, 1, and 1 pass target. He's going to be about 7% owned, projected at 11.4 fantasy points here this week. He's $5,200 DraftKings salary, $1,600 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 38 points scored in this game, with the Colts favored by 2.5. So I like this pick because low price tag, ownership is relatively low, and it's a fantastic matchup here. And Zach Moss getting pretty good volume the past 3 weeks. I think he can get 15 to 20 touches in this game. I think he can score a touchdown or 2 as well. So I like Zach Moss here versus the Houston Texans. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. So studs on the slate, you got Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. They finally both came alive last game. Chris Olave, you're saving salary with Chris Olave. Not exactly a stud on the slate, but he's been pretty good this year. So my stud pick at the wide receiver position is A.J. Brown from the Philadelphia Eagles, playing the New York Giants, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. And although they've been pretty good versus opposing wide receivers, A.J. Brown has averaged 18.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8.5 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 86% of the snaps, going to be about 9% owned, projected at 18.3 fantasy points here this week. And I like this pick because he's a stud that's only $8,000 DraftKings salary and only $300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 43 points scored in this game, with the Eagles favored by 14. Now, you could argue this is not a passing game script, which might be the case, but if the Eagles are going to be ahead by 14 points, they're going to have to score those points somehow. And A.J. Brown has scored 20, 19, and 30 fantasy points in the last 3 weeks off of 9, 8, and 16 pass targets. Then I believe they're going to get their quarterback back this week. So I think they're going to want to throw some balls to A.J. Brown the last week of the season to freshen up. So I like A.J. Brown here versus the New York Giants.
Real quick guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, my sleeper pick at the wide receiver position is Drake London from the Atlanta Falcons playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Drake London has averaged 10.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.8 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 79% of the snaps, going to be about 9% owned, so that ownership isn't as low as I'd like for a sleeper pick. But I do think this guy is going under the radar for most people, so that's why I wanted to bring him up here. He's projected at 12.8 fantasy points here this week. He's 4,900 DraftKings salary, 1,600 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Falcons favored by 4. So Drake London has scored 10, 16, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, 9, and 11 pass targets. So I love the volume, low price tag, especially on DraftKings. Great matchup. So I like Drake London here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. My tight end stud is George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers playing the Arizona Cardinals, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. George Kittle has averaged 13.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.7 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 90% of the snaps, going to be about 9% owned, projected at 12.8 fantasy points here this week. He's 6,000 DraftKings salary, 1,600 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the 49ers favored by 14. Now, with the 49ers expected to be leading this game by 2 touchdowns, you can make a case for Christian McCaffrey to be the stud of the slate, considering they picked him up halfway through the season. So I think they're going to give Christian McCaffrey plenty of volume, but I do expect George Kittle to get some volume as well, as they want to get all the reps that they can with these new quarterbacks. So George Kittle has scored 12, 33, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, and 5 pass targets. But he definitely wants to build up more chemistry with Brock Purdy before the season is over, and it's a fantastic matchup. So I like George Kittle here versus the Arizona Cardinals. Okay, my sleeper pick at the tight end position is Tyler Conklin from the New York Jets playing the Miami Dolphins, who have the 4th worst defense overall. They give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Tyler Conklin has averaged 8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.2 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 76% of the snaps, only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 7.8 fantasy points here in week 18. He's 3,600 DraftKings salary, 1,500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 38.5 points scored in this game, with the Jets trailing by 2. So Tyler Conklin has scored 14, 7, and 2 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 6, 4, and 2 pass targets. So his volume has been increasing the past 3 weeks. Had a great game last week. Now he's got a fantastic matchup, low price tag, and low ownership. So I like Tyler Conklin here versus the Miami Dolphins.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.